It's Wednesday, the 29th of July. Welcome to Frontier Opening Bell. I am Bosin Amofaye. Let me welcome Ali Kansachu in Nairobi, the CEO and founder at Rich Frontiers Management. Thank you, Ali. Morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Ayode Jebro is here in Lagos. He's a CEO and a chartered trader at Afrinvest Securities. Ayode, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
A very big day where you talk about the markets. Let's give you a quick rundown of yesterday's market for the African exchanges. The index looked a lot more red than green. South Africa brought in 0.3% into these big five that we cover on a daily basis. Nigeria was in the water, a bit of a profit booking, about 0.5%. So Ivory Coast finished flat, 0.02%. Egyptian, a little bit less than 0.1%. The Kenyan market slumped 1.87%, the deepest among the big five. But if you look at the stories around the East African coast, today is a big day for the Kenyan market as far as the central bank is making an announcement of its monetary policy decisions at about 4:30 local time in Nairobi. Kenya is looking to sell about 11-year infrastructure bond worth about 70 billion sometime in the next couple of weeks. Meantime, Euromoney is awarding Stanbic and Equity Bank in Kenya as the best boys within investment banking and banking with excellence. In Rwanda, it's going to be a big day in August when Semerwa, which is a cement company, lists by introduction. Meantime, good news that startups in Rwanda are getting support from funding. A food logistics startup called Get It has gotten it. A Series A funding, there was no figure disclosed. Ali, let's start on this. The FOMC, Jerome Powell will be making his own a presentation at about 7 p.m. Nigerian time, but I have my eye on the KCB.
Yes, yes. So as you said, the Monetary Policy Committee will be meeting here in Kenya. Frankly, I think that it will be an unchanged decision. They've already cut very dramatically. And I must commend the central bank governor, Dr. Patrick Njoroge, on what he has achieved, the massive suppression in the short end with T-bill oversubscriptions, driving down interest rates about 200 basis points across that short end curve. And effectively, that's now allowed him to push investors further out the curve. And hence you see this 11-year amortizing infrastructure bond. And it really has been the work of an artiste. He's played the hand he was dealt. We might disagree with the hand he was dealt, but he's played that hand with a great deal of finesse and needs to be commended for that. I think now really interest rates are, if it's like an elastic band, are stretched because it's beginning to impact the shilling, which hit a record low last week, has bounced anemically from that record low. And any further suppression of interest rates, I think, is going to hit the currency pretty hard. So it's a balancing act right now. Before I go to the other stories, may I just back up on two things? COVID, we were talking before you went live. Africa case infections now 869,000. We're in an exponential nonlinear phase, infections growing about 30% a week. Ethiopia tripled in the last month. It's Kenya, similar story. And all these countries are now caught in this catch-22. They can't afford to shut down. That Western philosophy of shutting down has failed because if you do that, you face an economic apocalypse. So just for investors to consider that the virus remains an exogenous uncertainty that remains unresolved and is now entering this exponential phase. And one other quick point, Kenya flew for the funeral of President Mkapa, whom we were speaking about yesterday. There seems to be a major diplomatic incident. That plane was turned back. There were issues around comments President Kenyatta made in his last state of address to the nation, when he said Kenya was looking to be transparent and not bury people at night Tanzanian authorities took that to mean he was speaking to them. Listing of Simewa PLC, the cement company in Rwanda, that's a positive step. This speaks to Rwanda really being ahead of the curve. It's a small exchange, but they're nimble, they're agile, they're quick. And then that Rwanda food logistics startup, Get It. This is I was seeing a story yesterday, McDonald's, 90% of McDonald's sales in the US were drive-through. So just to give you an idea that the days of going and sitting in a restaurant with the restaurant full and everybody serving you are currently no longer in play. And I think that just speaks to global appetite for this kind of business and Rwanda being smart and quick. And that's a significant step forward.
Well, I think across beyond even the restaurants and food business, I think the drive-through business will have to go across a number of sectors as we move on. The banks will have to think about it in countries like Nigeria, where folks still want to see the inside of the banking halls. A number of businesses will have to do a drive-through so that folks can just move on and just try to avoid it's a bit of the social distancing, taking it a little bit further, where occasions where we do shopping and things like that is a whole brand new world for the global village. I agree with you, Ali. Ayodeji of Afrinvest, talk us through the Nigeria's debt market. It's been an interesting month for the month of July. The DMO auction was well oversubscribed. Yields have touched the bottom. Nigeria's 10-year paper yesterday was fetching around 7.7%. But the big story folks are still trying to understand this money is the $1.5 billion prepayment deal between the NNPC, Vitol, and Matrix Energy, backed by Afrexim Bank and UBA, which will start next month. Banking consolidation continues. UBA, which is Nigeria's bank with the highest number of footprints across sub-Saharan Africa, announced 6 executives for 6 African countries. Dangote is not letting go of the share buyback option, says it may use open tender. And for repo transactions in Ghana, the central bank issues new regulations around how that will be handled by banks and other financial institutions. Ayodeji, let's talk about the Nigerian space a bit.
Okay, thank you. Look, starting with the fixed income market, we all know this, and the major factor that has been driving yields has been the liquidity in the system. So we've been seeing very significant maturity, and there are very limited investment options. So for most of the fund managers and the PFAs, which are the major guys, and even for the HOMO, for the foreign guys, because the CBN is yet to be intervening or supplying them with dollars, they are indirectly being they don't have any other choice than to roll over. So as a result, we've been seeing yields trending down significantly. Even if you check the last bond auction that held last week was significantly oversubscribed, as well as the PMA auction earlier this month. The PMA for today was cancelled and moved to next week because of the Salah break. Yeah. So for the fixed income, what would we feel that we may continue to just see is that based on this low interest rate environment, for some of the firms that need to restructure their finances, they may want to take advantage of that within this period. We've seen a lot of commercial paper issuances. For that has slowed down because also when you look at it from the economy angle, for most of those companies, when they don't see potential for expansion, some of them capacity utilization is still very low. So raising funds to expand now really will not make much business sense for them. So touching on the UBA news, we know UBA, Pan-African country, and trying to solidify is also a way to also diversify its risk across Africa. We know when you look at financial inclusion within the Africa region, it's still really very, very low, which shows a lot of potential that they can also penetrate. So they're taking that bold move. You can see the likes of even Access Bank also just consolidated a bank in, is it in Libya? Sorry, I can't recall the country now, but in Kenya, thanks. Yeah. So most of them are trying to see by that African vision also to diversify, because there's a lot of potential within that space. Then wrapping up with the big news on the NMPC structure, about $1.5 billion, which was $1.5 billion prepayment. So what that simply means is that they would get the fund $1.5 billion upfront while they continue to deliver crude for, I think, for the next 5 years, about 15,000 barrels per day for the next 5 years. We feel this is very ingenious because we know that the proceeds have reduced significantly. Oil proceeds have reduced within this period, and there are also limited options to raise finances. So upfronting this 1.5 billion, one will be positive for our reserves, and the CBN will have more firepower to be able to defend and maybe begin to intervene within the I&E window. But we feel this is very ingenious, and if they can also structure more of that. But we now need to look back, because if we mortgage and we collect all the money up front now, and we don't use them for something meaningful, then it means we are just postponing the evil day. So we need to be deliberate about what we use those proceeds for, so that those proceeds can open up. So I would expect that they should use to diversify. I saw something on maybe to build refineries, which would help reduce the demand for FX. But with Dangote refinery, I believe that we may even be self-sufficient within that space. So we should look at how do we want to, within the agri space, adding value to most of our raw materials, so that we can export and generate these dollars. We don't have to depend on oil alone. And I think that's where I'll leave it for now.
I agree with you, again, because this $1.5 billion deal is about the same amount, the same size of the first tranche of the World Bank, or sort of the IMF loan that Nigeria was suspected to get this month. But today is the 29th. That money hasn't come in yet from Washington, so it's still hanging out there for as far as that is. Okay, thank you, Ayo. Let's talk about the Southern African space. A bit of news coming through from the non-agri sector, job loss 0.2% in Q1. Meantime, the mining companies, as well as others, are reporting their quarterly earnings. Kumba Iron Ore, which is a subsidiary of Amplats, reported a 17% dip in interim earnings. Meantime, gold is shining and its derivatives, and no wonder Invest ETF lists additional 450,000 debentures of Africa Gold on the JSE. Zimbabwe Stock Exchange is reopening on the 3rd of August. Let's have the opening bell. In Malawi, FDH Bank IPO was overbought by very big amounts, by 300 million Malawian kwacha. But let's have the opening bell in Harare with Ali. Let's go.
This really is around the issue of Old Mutual Zimbabwe. Government have said that it's allowing price fixing of the foreign exchange rate. The currency, by the way, had its worst week, down 6% over the last 5 sessions, and has fallen dramatically over the last month. So they've got a very difficult challenge there, and obviously taking very radical action, which was to shut down the stock exchange whilst they investigated this. So now they've announced that they're going to reopen the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange without Old Mutual and 2 other stocks, whom they're saying they're trying to persuade them to go and list at that foreign currency exchange they wanted to open up at Victoria Falls. So at the moment, it remains pretty uncertain. You've also got a lock on the mobile money business of Econet Wireless. But, you know, I think it's important, an important statement. President Mnangagwa was going around the world saying Zimbabwe is open for business. If you haven't got a stock exchange that's open, you're not open for business. I think it's very important that you see that happen as quickly as possible, and we'll follow events together as things unfold and we learn more about what's actually happening. South African non-agricultural sector loses jobs. I saw another report saying South Africa had shed up to 3 million jobs in the last quarter. It's obviously a seriously apocalyptic situation across the continent. South Africa just has better data points than most of us. But clearly this is not a good situation, and the question is, they've got the money from the IMF now. How well do they put the money they've received to work in order to reignite or restart this economy? And I think with Tito, at least we can have some confidence. We've got a sophisticated finance minister who probably knows what needs to be done. Kumba iron ore down 17%. Interestingly, the iron ore prices have held up quite well. So I think this is another production scenario. JSE Invest ETF lists additional 450,000 African gold debentures. These are the best of times for gold bugs. I mean, we've been at a record this week. I think Monday we broke the all-time intraday high. We closed above 1921. We're now around $1,955. It looks very firm to me. I think this is a perfect storm for gold. Everyone debasing their currencies, near zero interest rates. It doesn't get better than this, and therefore I expect that announcement to be the first in a sequence of announcements. It's a huge opportunity for South Africa to put value addition on their gold mines and attract investor interest into that space. Lastly, Malawi Stock Exchange. That's interesting, isn't it? Overbought quite substantively. And I think this is optimism around the new president, the ex-pastor, Chikwera, who has excited a lot of people. However, there's been a lot of noise coming out of Malawi in the last 48 hours as he turns the screws on the predecessor's business associates and friends, and so there's noise. But I think, you know, the signal is the market, like President Kagame said. He said the market never lies a few years ago. That's a powerful signal to me that investors are willing to put money to work in the new Malawi under the new president.
Quite a robust one there within the Southern African space. Very interesting. Ayodeji, Nigeria's earnings season is getting started. We've seen Lafarge, Dangote Cement, we've seen Presco yesterday, we saw Okomu Oil about 48 or 36 hours ago. What's your take at Afrinvest with this earnings on the street? We haven't seen from the big banks yet.
Yes, starting with those bank and those companies that have published their half year, we looking at the industrial goods space. Was a positive surprise. You can Dangote Cement, Lafarge, WAPCO. You can see that jump in top line. I know once we at the analyst call, we still have questions to ask on how they were able to work around the lockdown period, because we anticipate there will be some form of slowdown because construction actually stopped for some months before the economy reopened. And even the Minister for Finance also acknowledged that that a lot of the construction works are yet to come upstream. So there are a lot of questions, but it's positive for the market. We can see that impacting on the prices of those stocks. Within the telecom space, we are bullish on MTN. Airtel Africa, though, when you dissect, you look at the result in details, there was some form of improvement in top line, but wasn't that impressive. But we believe that for the way MTN's revenue is structured, with also this lockdown, they should be able to also it should be positive. But for the banks, we are not very optimistic, and there are a lot of pressure points from regulatory pressure points, also the environment. We know when you check based on industry numbers, effective CRR is about 60%. It means CBN has is it close to 4 or 5 trillion naira not earning. So banks have that significant amount with the CBN not earning any interest. Also, a lot of loans have had to be restructured now based on at the last MPC meeting. The CBN governor also hinted that most of the banks have tried to restructure about 50% of the total loans. It means for some of them, they may not be able to get interest now. They might have given some form of moratorium, also restructured interest payment as well as principal. So it's not looking very exciting for them. Where the line, the income line where we see there may be a jump is fees and commission. So we've seen more use of their online platforms, and especially during the lockdown, people had no choice than to transfer, and that we should see a boost within that. But by and large, there will be an increase in the impairment charges, which would impact also on their bottom line. So we're expecting them to, especially the top banks, to record a single-digit decline in their PAT, both top line and their PAT for this quarter.
The banks are going to feel a whole lot of heat, as you said. This morning, Barclays Bank, or overnight, Barclays Bank in the UK reported 1.6 billion pounds set aside for loans related to virus that will likely go bad. Barclays reported a decline in profit and took $4.8 billion in charges, impairments for the period you're talking about. That's as bad as Barclays Bank got hit. $1.6 billion pounds set aside. Ali, that's a whole lot of money.
So if you look at the banking stock segment in Europe and in the United Kingdom, it's been one of the worst performing segments of the stock market, in part because the suppression in interest rates close to zero leaves very little margin. The European banks similarly came under tremendous pressure. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this provisioning, which is going to be pretty substantial. And the weak link is, of course, in the developed markets are the banks, I'm afraid, because I still think there are some huge provisions to be taken.
Unlike in developing economies, frontier markets like Nigeria and Kenya, where in Africa, where fees over transfer of money using electronic means will bring some sort of succor to the banks. In developed economies where they've already gone through that stage, everyone is already online. So they will not be seeing any much of revenue from that sport. I know, and folks are going to be a lot of delinquency, that you said, on loans and all of that. It's going to be a very tough one. Let's wrap it up in North Africa, where the Ethiopian authorities are floating the currency. For me, that's the biggest story there. I'm planning the new key rates. Are the Ethiopians heading the way of the Egyptians, Ali? Then, of course, the Egyptians find new gas off the coast, a few miles off the coast of the Total, BP, and Eni, the Italian Eni, are in that business. Let's talk about this too, Ali, shall we?
So, yes, this was an announcement yesterday that Ethiopia was looking to float its currency and planning a sort of monetary policy interest rate in order to control interest rate transmission into the economy. However, when I read into the last paragraph, they're talking about this happening in 3 years' time. This is way too long. President Abiy came in, he was all gung-ho about how he was going to reform the economic sector. He's just got to look at what Sisi did. He's got to get on with it, and he's got to float that currency as soon as the next couple of months and be done with it. You know, this dithering when it comes to the currency just causes long-term damage to the economy. It allows people to play games with two-tier or three-tier currencies, structures. And I, for one, think he needs to get back on track. He needs to be as bold as he has been with his GERD. He needs to be that bold with the capital markets. He's looking at opening up the telecom sector. It's high time he floated that currency. Of course, there'll be a one-off shock because Ethiopia has this enormous buildup of demand for foreign currency. But, you know, you either bite the bullet, and the way to look at it is to look at what Sisi did. Sisi did it. The IMF, the World Bank supported him, and today he is the darling of foreign investors and domestic investors on the continent. So I would urge Prime Minister Abiy to be bold, get on track, you know, and start thinking, not delaying and slow balling this thing. Total BPNE, they found some gas off Egypt's coast, positive news. Of course, Sisi's been talking about how all the vehicles are going to be gas-fired in Egypt. He's trying to transform that to create demand for the gas that they're finding. Orascom, we were talking about Naguib Siwiris yesterday. There's a very strong shock troop supporter of Sisi, and he's looking to split Orascom into two: financial services and investments.
Yes, interesting scenarios we've seen across the various regions on the continent. Thank you so much, Ali. We appreciate your being on Frontier Opening Bell today, Wednesday. It's going to be a public holiday for the Salah celebrations tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday as well. So Nigerian markets will be closed. Quite a lot of folks are already traveling despite the pandemic and all of that. Folks want to spend some time with families and friends, but it's going to be business as usual here on Frontier Opening Bell. Thank you so much, Ali. We appreciate your time for coming to on the show today. And to Ayode Jiebo, who is the CEO at Afrinvest Securities. Bye for now. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.